I am Dungeon Thrasher Lenny Blade, and this is the Dungeons and Thrashers show. And today I wanted to talk about my history, such as it is, with miniature gaming, because I haven't done that much miniature gaming, so this is just going to be a one-part episode for sure. So, yeah, I'll just go through my whole miniature experience from the 80s up until where we are now. And yeah, and I'll let you know why me and my buddy Eric were the worst nightmare of Games Workshop, at least the worst nightmare to their business model. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So without further ado, let's go. Just like any other kid, or any other boy, I should say, growing up in the early 80s, being born in the mid-70s, and sort of spending most of my childhood in the 80s, you know, I was completely engrossed by violence and war and, you know, bloody things, action, that kind of stuff. So just like many other kids, I also played with those little army men that you remember, the plastic little army men that in some circles are called miniatures, but we used to just call them army men basically. And you would buy these playsets that had tanks and soldiers and even terrain. And now looking back, you know, some of those sort of playsets that I bought was probably part of some sort of miniature rule set or whatever, because some of the ones that I bought would actually come, you know, the soldiers would come on sprues and things like that. But of course, when we played with the soldiers, we didn't use any rule system or anything. We would just, you know, play around. I think maybe we tried later on to use tabletop role-playing game rules to play with the army men, but it just, you know, it didn't really go anywhere. And also around the same time, maybe even a little bit earlier, there was another form of toy soldiers that were very popular in Sweden, and that was the lead soldiers, like the you could cast yourself. So you would have a mold and clamps on either side, and then you would have a ladle, and you would melt lead. You know, so it would become liquid lead, and then you would sort of pour it into the mold, and you could cast your own miniatures. And these miniatures were affectionately known as the Napoleonic flats. And one of the reasons they were so popular in Sweden, I think, was that you could actually get Swedish soldiers, because during the Napoleonic era, you know, Sweden still fought wars. You know, so you didn't have to play as a British or American soldier. You know, now you could actually paint your miniatures blue and yellow, and you could take Sweden out to war once again. That kind of stuff. But seriously, this segues into my first real foray into real miniature gaming, and that would be the same company that put out many of those molds, Prince August. I think it's a British company. They came out with a fantasy line. So, you know, now you could buy molds of orcs, dwarves, even wraiths, you know, elves. There was even catapults and things like that, like sleeping and camping adventurers, anything you could think of. And so now you could cast your own fantasy armies. So now, you know, things started opening up a little bit, and this actually coincided perfectly with the rise of the role-playing game in Sweden as well. So this was also very popular. And in the beginning, we just used the tabletop role-playing game rules to play with these and with these miniatures, but it was still very fun. I actually had one of those Braunstein castles. You know, that was one of the first games that Gary Gygax played in some early Gen Con. I am the Dungeon Thrasher. I don't do research, unfortunately, but you can check it out. I think it was like one of the first Gen Cons, and I think that chainmail it came out of the Braunstein game, and then Dungeons and Dragons out of Chainmail or something like that. So, and I actually had the same kind of model castle when I was a kid growing up. So now when you could cast your own orc armies, obviously now you could recreate the Middle-earth stuff. But we still didn't have a real miniature system to play with. That was about to change because, what was it, maybe like a few years later in 90, maybe 91, I can't remember exactly, I bought Iron Crown Enterprises, actually of all people put out a miniature box set, which included rules and a setting as well. It was called Bladestorm, and it was a really solid rule set, and the setting was really cool too. So I got a hold of that, so now we had a real solid miniature gaming system to play with. And that was cool, although unfortunately I played it mostly solo, which which wasn't, optimal obviously, but though I did play with a couple of friends a few times. And it was a good system that I really enjoyed. Now I'm not going to go into details of Hero Quest, for example, because even though Hero Quest uses miniatures, in my opinion, it's not a miniature game, it's a board game, and that's not what I'm talking about here today, so I'm gonna skip that. But a few years after I bought Bladestorm, I also bought Warhammer 40 from a friend of mine, and I bought it simply because I liked Bolt Thrower, and Bolt Thrower was using that exact same cover, so I bought the book from him, and I read it, and I really enjoyed the setting, and I thought it seemed like a cool rule system. But just like Battletech and Aerotech, which I also had, I never really got to play it, but back then. But I also brought it to college when I moved to a different town for my last year of college. I brought it with me, and Eric, my friend, and we used to play for days. We used to have these really mammoth sessions, and we're talking, 12, 16 hours, almost non-stop playing, and so in the back of that edition, it was a soft cover, second edition, like a soft cover book, I can't really remember, but at the end of the book there were these tokens that you could just photocopy and use. So we did that. We went to the library and we copied all those tokens. I think there were orcs and space marines, and anything we could use as terrain, empty milk cartons, empty toilet rolls, rugs, whatever we could find to use as terrain. We would have these great battles, and we would play, and then we would be like, okay, let's do a final battle. I remember, and then when that was done, okay, let's do a final battle, and we would just keep playing, and we had so much fun during that year. And you know what, we didn't spend a single dollar on miniatures, or a single krona I should say, on miniatures. Didn't buy a single thing. We had one second-hand copy of the book, and we had a blast, and that's, obviously goes against the whole business model of Games Workshop, but it was still a lot of fun. So anyways, and then a few years after that, Necromunda came out, and that was a setting I was really engrossed by. So I bought Necromunda, and I bought the Outlanders box set as well. I had a couple of gangs, the Van Zars or whatever they were called, and Van Zars? Was that what they were called? And the Goliaths. And yeah, and that was another game that I thought was really good. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play it as much as I would have liked, but we did play a couple of games. And and then unfortunately I just sold it after I moved, and that's pretty much it as far as gaming, miniature gaming go for me. Since then, I haven't really picked up anything. I've been thinking about it because all Games Workshop put out this great looking Middle-earth strategy battle game, and the Hobbit, you would have the Battle of the Five Armies, and Lord of the Rings, the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and all those really, really nice looking box sets. And as you know, I am a Middle-earth fanatic, so that would have been great, but it's just like the price point that puts me off. But now with 3D printing, you know, I can sort of go back to the time that I was talking about before in the early 80s or the 80s when you could cast your own miniatures. 3D gaming is sort of like a return to that in a way. So right now I'm actually looking into a few different systems that I could 3D print and play. So we'll see what I come up with. I feel like I definitely want to get into the miniature gaming again, especially after watching Roman Dazel's videos. He did a multi-part video just showing off the game. He's playing with one of his friends, and it seemed a lot of fun. And you know, there are also, you know, 3D printers, and resin is not that expensive anymore, so it seems a little bit more approachable to me. So anyways, we'll see. So yeah, that's my history in miniature gaming, such as it was/is. So alright, talk to you next time. See ya. Alright, and as a little tag on to that video, I was narrating the video and I realized that I forgot to mention that we actually played Blood Bowl as well. My friend Eric that I talked about in this video and I actually went to his place to play Blood Bowl, and that was the second edition we played, and we used the Star Players expansion as well. I can't even remember who won the game or anything. I do remember enjoying it because I think we played 2 games, and that must have been 95, I think. 95, but I haven't played any Blood Bowl since then. I do consider Blood Bowl a miniature game because that's the main sort of mechanic, right? So, but I would like to play Blood Bowl again. Anyways, that was just the tag on. See ya.